Welcome to our presentation. In case you guys don't know yet, today we're going to be talking about waste reduction and contamination in our community, why it's important, and what we can do to make sure that we're working towards a more sustainable Pleasanton. So to get us started, I'd like to just introduce ourselves first. So we're here on behalf of two different organizations. The first one is the GGI, the Go Green Initiative, which is founded by our lovely Ms. Buck. And GGI is working with the City of Pleasanton to help bring environmental policy and awareness information to you. And the second organization is the Local Leaders of the 21st Century. We're a branch of the GGI that has set up multiple environmental awareness and sustainability clubs across the United States. And in Pleasanton, what our club has done as a group from Amador, we are the group that has worked to bring the solar panels to the Amador Valley parking lot, as well as bringing the 3-bin system across Pleasanton. So I think those are some of the cool things that we've done in the past. And moving on to...
Yeah, so first we're going to be going into the environmental effects of the waste contamination. And some examples first include land, water, and air. For land contamination, we know that in normal waste, it gets broken down by the earth, and then anything from that gets absorbed into the earth. But with waste contamination, then you have harmful or dangerous chemicals that can be broken down and taken into the earth, which is not good in any direct or indirect contact with organisms of the environment. Secondly is water. Water, actually the majority of waste contamination that's not disposed properly will end up in water, and that's a really big deal because water is very connected. It has a lot of different sources and it spreads very easily. In the same way as earth, the water will break down and take in those harmful chemicals which can diffuse to any aquatic environment. And then the third one is air, and that's also very similar to water. So yeah, as I said, a lot of organisms can be indirectly or directly impacted by the dangerous chemicals, whether that's in their environment or in the food that they eat. And then some examples of this more specifically is radiation poisoning. As we know, many of us know, radiation is very hard to get rid of, and it also spreads very easily. It's also very dangerous. And similarly, a little bit less known is PFAS chemicals. These are also known as forever chemicals, and basically the reason why they're called that is because they cannot be broken down by heat, bacteria, or water, or earth, or anything of the like. And they're man-made. You can find them in everyday products. They could be in your kitchen utensils. They could be in any household items, everyday objects. And ironically, one way that we figured out that we can get rid of them is through other chemicals, which is not very good. But as you can see, in June 8, 2022, this is the known contamination in the United States. And there are a total of 2,854 locations in the 50 states here. And then if we go on to the next slide, this is suspect of contamination significantly more. It's 41,824. This is a couple years ago. In 2022, so last year, it rose to over 57,000. So it's a really big increasing number. And another thing is, if this doesn't really quite seem relevant, then you can look at our community, our small community, Dublin, Pleasanton, Livermore. There's still a lot of known suspect contaminations even here. And the third thing that I'm going to be going into is worker impact. So there's a lot of indirect or direct contact that workers can come into when they are interacting with waste contamination. If we go on to the next slide. Basically, when workers are working with any waste contamination, they could bring back any harmful or dangerous chemicals back to their homes and personal environments, and that can spread easily to their families, their friends, and any other personal environments there. And this is a study by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, and you can see all the different chemicals that were found to be impacting workers.
Okay, now I'm going to be talking about why waste sorting is so important. You probably heard many organizations talk about waste sorting as one of the main things, and I'm going to tell you why it's so important. So, sorting is one of the best ways that individuals can make an environmental impact and make their environment healthier. Today it is just common practice to put whatever waste you produce into the landfill, but actually it's not that great because as you can see from the EPA, 75% of American waste is recyclable, and only 30% of that is actually recycled, which is a lot of waste that could potentially be reused, but it's actually just going into landfills. And this waste can't be sorted once it is put into landfill because potentially toxic materials go into the landfills, and so no one can like sort it out because they can't like get those chemicals on them. And this reveals like the true purpose of the landfill, which is like the last resort for waste that can be reused, composted, and recycled in that order. And it kind of begs the question, like, why is no one like sorting their waste as much as they should be? Like, why aren't enough people doing it? And it's usually because of the lack of education in waste sorting, which is why organizations like the Broken Initiative aim to educate people on waste sorting, because it can make a really big impact on our future. And there are many other benefits to waste sorting that a lot of people don't see, which is one of them being like landfills fill up at a slower rate than they would if we just put things in the landfill without thinking about where they can go other than the landfill. As you can see from the statistic, 25% of food waste is put into the landfill, which is 21.5 million tons of food every year. And we can like reduce that statistic just by making small decisions every day on waste sorting, and it can eventually lead to a better future of our planet.
So as we mentioned, a lot of stuff is not put in the correct waste bin. So I'll be going over that stuff, like one of the more commonly sorted items in 3 categories: recycling, compost, and hazardous waste. So first of all, recycling. If something is recyclable, as you see here, there will be a little triangle that has arrows on it with a number from 1 through 7. So plastics 1 through 7 are all recyclable. So feel free to put that in the recycling bin. So first, most commonly missorted items, plastic bags. So the plastic bags that are like really thin and that tear easily do not go in the recycling. So if you use that to like maybe hold your recycling items, please be sure to put that in a landfill separate from those recycling items. The plastic bags that are a bit thicker that you get from the grocery stores are a bit more complicated. So I would advise you to double check with wherever your grocery outlet is to talk about recycling possibilities. A little bit of a side note, if you wanted to have a plastic bag to say put in your compost in your kitchen, you can always find biodegradable bags on Amazon and Walmart.com or whatnot to make sure that you're not putting landfill stuff into the compost. So next, plastic straws and plastic utensils. So these items, although they are plastic, are really flimsy, and there's not much of an economic incentive to put them in the recycling, so these do belong in the landfill. Dirty containers. So containers that would normally belong in the recycling will have to end up in the landfill if they are contaminated. So if you are going to put things such as jars, cans, maybe food boxes that are food contaminated, please be sure to clean it and dry it before you put it in the recycling. And lastly, broken glass. So broken glass, although glass by itself is technically recyclable, once it is broken, it poses a threat to our workers, so that does belong in the landfill. Next, compost, or green waste items. One important thing to note about green waste items is that whatever goes here is going to be broken down at that compost facility and then be sold as like compost product. So there are times when we like accidentally put things in the compost that don't belong there, but that does cause problems for that that result in compost products. So we want to avoid these mistakes as much as we can. So one thing to note is that food soiled paper and wet and greasy cardboard does belong in the compost since it does break down over time. Frozen food boxes, although they kind of look like paper, they do not belong in the compost since they have layers of materials that don't break down over time. And pet waste. Pet waste does not belong in the compost, which is kind of confusing because, cow manure goes with fertilizer, so why doesn't pet waste? Well, pet waste has a high risk of containing E. coli, salmonella, parasites, ringworm, tapeworm, stuff that doesn't break down with normal composting procedures, and we don't want that ending up in our food. So pet waste, landfill. Lastly, hazardous items. Hazardous items like e-waste, something like paint, they must be handled differently. This is because they contain, some of them may contain toxic fumes or they might be flammable. And they may cause fires at the waste facilities, which is dangerous for our workers. So the best way to deal with hazardous waste is to check for your waste pickup times or drop-off centers, which great way to figure out where these pickup times and where these drop-off locations are is through the resource app, which we will be going over in a couple of slides.
All right, so thank you to Regina for going over some commonly missorted items. I hope you guys all learned something that you didn't already know so far. So next, I'm going to be going into the policy aspect of California's sorting bills and how we can all be more environmentally friendly from the governmental aspect as well, like laws and such. So first thing is SB 1383. So this stands for Senate Bill 1383, which was a California law passed in 2016, back like 6 years ago. I can do math. And basically it has two overall goals. So the first thing is more concrete with the numbers attached to it, and it is to mandate reduction of organic waste disposal by 75% by 2025. So they also mentioned on the website something alluding to 30 years ago, so you compare that to 30 years ago and the organic waste that was produced by California since back then. And then another overall overarching goal of SB 1383 is to lower California's methane production with proper sorting and integrating proper containers and such. So I'm actually going to go into a bit more specifics about what exactly the bill entails. So addressing the sorting aspect first is that this law requires businesses to have mandatory participation in organic curbside collection services or self-hauling of waste and proper container integration. So as for us consumers, that would just basically mean that businesses are required to have these 3 bins that you guys are hopefully familiar with, the blue, black, and green bins, so that us consumers as well as other employees and other individuals can properly sort our waste. And then going off of what else businesses are required to do through this bill, businesses provide indoor access to these bins, as well as waste collection services for employees, tenants, contractors, and customers in which we would properly sort our waste. So it's imperative to properly use these 3 bins and comply with the California law. But yeah, another preface, something that just came to mind is that actually we have a modern update on this as well. So you know how I was mentioning in 2016 the bill was passed? Well, in January of 2022, it actually also went into effect. So these regulations, some of the ones that I'm mentioning, are already being required of businesses, and in 2024, the government, I believe, or whoever is in charge of mandating them will begin checking and making sure that everything is going well and waste is being properly sorted. And then the second aspect of SB 1383 that I will go into is surrounding stopping food shortage. So I know Shugo was mentioning about the various millions of waste that are generated each year, and this aspect of SB 1383 tries to essentially kill multiple birds with one stone. So it's targeting food waste, and because if you think about it, at the end of the day, wasting food is not just wasting the land, the energy resources, the labor that was gone into producing it, but also it is a type of waste itself, it's an organic waste. So by employing the specific aspect of SB 1383, which is to save 20% of otherwise wasted food and redistributing that to those in need, we'll be able to reduce the amount of food that we waste, and then also help out those in need who do need food. And also, in a few slides, we're actually going to be talking about this new program that actually complies with SB 1383 and reducing the amount of food wastage that we have. So, and then one more side note is that non-compliance with these regulations will lead to fines and penalties, and Elena will be addressing that in another slide. And next slide, please. So yeah, I just basically mentioned a lot about food wastage, shortage, stopping that, but also a lot about what businesses have to do to comply with SB 1383. That's how they're being kept accountable and making sure that we have these proper sorting facilities in various businesses around the community. However, that poses the question, who does SB 1383 exactly impact besides just businesses? So you can have a question in your mind, or an answer to that question. I hope you guys all have the same answer, which is, yeah, short answer is everyone. So while I was mentioning a lot about businesses, in the end, SB 1383 is very much impacting everyone. So I have a quote from Cal Recycle that I'll just read out real quick, stating that, it impacts everyone, including quote unquote all residents, businesses, and then it has like a bunch of side notes about, edible food generated and so on and so forth, solid waste facilities and other local food banks and other food recovery organizations. So forgive my cliche, but we can go into the next animation. Yes, it's very much a puzzle analogy. So while businesses are doing their part on having these 3 bins and other compliances with SB 1383, in the end, it's still up to everyone in the community, from us, consumers, or businesses, and other individuals to properly store waste properly and make our community Pleasanton, make Alameda County, and make California a more environmentally friendly, sustainable, and methane waste reduction place. Yep.
So as Victoria alluded to earlier, there are fines and penalties for people who do not comply with SB 1383. For example, the City of Pleasanton is required to record the amount of edible waste that is being wasted each day, and if we are wasting so much food, we are fined each time we're wasting this food. In order to keep up with these increasing fines, the City of Pleasanton has begun to increase our garbage prices. For example, in the last 5 years, garbage prices have gone up by 5% for the bins. Not only are consumers being fined for this, but also small businesses. If small businesses and other businesses within Pleasanton in California are not complying with this law, they have penalties and fines placed upon them, which makes it more difficult for them to continue doing business because they need to continue to pay these increasing fines. So in order for us to comply with this law, everyone needs to do their part to keep these prices low and allow our small businesses to thrive in Pleasanton, as well as to make California a greener place. We all need to comply and properly sort our trash to ensure that we're not being fined for our sorting.
Okay, so now we just talked about all of the problems that are there, and I think it's about time that we get into what we can actually do to fix this. So like Regina mentioned earlier, we talked about some commonly missorted items that would be really helpful if we were able to get the community to shift to putting these in the right bins. In addition to this, we have a couple other solutions that we'd like to highlight. So one of them is bin sizes. So for single-family residences in Pleasanton, you can actually upgrade your recycling in your compost bin, which is the blue and the green bin, to the 96-gallon bins for free. And if you don't have the largest size, which is what's shown on the slide here, then you're eligible to upgrade your bins for no price. Depending on if you don't live in a single-family residence, there are other options that are available that you can find on the Pleasanton Garbage Service website. And the second thing we'd like to highlight is biodegradable trash bags for green bins. So I think Regina mentioned this a little bit earlier, but when we're actually putting away our food waste, we can't put these in the normal trash bags that we do buy from, for example, Costco, that we have our plastic. Because if you throw the plastic bag into the green bin, then it eventually nulls all of the work that you tried to do because the plastic isn't compostable. So in order to fix this, you want to try to buy biodegradable trash bags for the green bins, and they're actually very easy to find. So if you can see here, I just pulled up 3 different options off of Amazon, and it took me like 45 seconds to find these. All you search up is compostable trash bags, and they come up really quickly. And I've actually been using these at iHome for like I think 3 or 4 years now, and they do work well. So I think that this is just a really small change, but it can save so much waste. So I think it's one of the more really important things that we can do as a community. And the second thing I'd like to kind of put out there is something that Amador as a club, the local leaders, is trying to do. So Too Good To Go is a free mobile app that's meant to reduce food waste that businesses create. And so what Amador as a club is doing is we're trying to bring this app to Pleasanton. So Too Good To Go connects users like us to businesses, where they can have the food waste that they would normally throw away at the end of the day and put it on this app at a reduced price, and consumers can buy this. So most of the food on there is like half price off. They're all really good deals, and it's a great way to get rid of surplus food, which benefits both the consumer and the business. So our team is currently working to get more businesses in Pleasanton to get signed up onto the app, so hopefully we can create a thriving ecosystem to reduce the surplus food waste that we have in our community.
Alright, now hearing about all of that, you guys might be wondering, how might we, Pleasanton, do something about this? Well, starting at ABHS, we have a great team consisting of students, staff, and custodians who are working together to help reduce waste production and improve waste sorting in our school. And you might be wondering, we're talking about students. How is this related to California residents? Let me get there in a second. So we've been tracking for the past 9 to 10 weeks now. We've been tracking waste through this app. It allows us to see how much it costs to empty our waste, as you can see here. In this next slide, this is for the month of February this year. And you can see how much it costs to transport our waste and have it processed at waste facilities. So you can see here it costs around $2,000 just to transport our waste to the facilities. And in case most of you guys don't know, all of this money comes from the school's budget, and the school's budget is paid by our tax money. So this is another big problem. Since most of the students at our school do not know how to sort their waste, the waste often gets contaminated, and when the waste gets contaminated, all of it has to end up in the landfill. So by working to create these projects and green team projects, we can learn how to redirect our funds somewhere else. So today, I just wanted to show you guys these pictures. It's quite often for students to leave their trash unattended during lunch, and I just wanted to let you guys know that this isn't just applicable to students, this is also applicable to the general public as well. Oftentimes I see people dumping their junk down by the creek or litter on the side of the road, and I just wanted to let you guys know that these actions accumulate. So I brought one of my green team members in to talk about the projects that we're working on.
Thank you, Amanda. So currently we're trying to implement the bin monitor system. This is where during lunch or brunches, students will monitor other students sorting, and this is to hopefully reduce or prevent the recyclable or compostable materials that end up in the trash bin. Other projects we've been working on include videos, flyers, pins, and badges, and currently we're trying to get a guest speaker who can talk about their own personal experiences to our school. And if this goes well, we'll try to bring it up to the Pleasanton communities.
Thank you, Brahmi. So hopefully our green team projects can serve not just as a model for our school, but also be executed on a broader scale for businesses, companies, and Pleasanton as a community.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about PFAS now, and PFAS are chemicals that are found in many places, from our water system to children's toys, and it's a chemical that actually does do a lot of harm. It can mess with our body's hormones, and it causes things like cancer. And it was actually mentioned by Ella in her part, and she talked about how they're forever chemicals. The reason they're called forever chemicals is because they're long-lasting in the environment and our bodies. They don't break down very easily. These are just like some ways that PFAS end up like in our environment, and we don't even know about these chemicals. So it kind of makes us wonder, why aren't these chemicals like warned against in products? Like, I'm sure when you're buying your children's toys or like anything really, you want to be warned against like chemicals that can potentially harm you. But we don't often see warnings for PFAS when we buy things. And the reason for that is like weak federal laws, or weak laws and federal loopholes, and where the government can't enforce this for companies to do. And that kind of brings up Prop 65 and AB 1200, which are policies in California that are meant to protect consumers against these chemicals that could be harmful to them. And it makes the government cause companies to either warn consumers about them before they buy the product, but it also causes companies to reformulate their products without these PFAS, which is beneficial for us. One of the main places that PFAS are found is single-use paper food packaging. which is something that people don't usually suspect because paper packaging can be composted most of the time. So people often wonder like how are harmful chemicals like in the packaging that can be composted that's beneficial, that's more beneficial for the environment than like plastic packaging. And a lot of people, a lot of communities are actually like getting more into composting, but often paper packaging that doesn't have PFAS are composted with other paper, and it causes PFAS to end up in our environment, in our water systems. As you can see from this image, it shows California and the PFAS in our water systems, with the darkest places being where the most PFAS are, and the lightest places, the lightest blue places being where there is no PFAS. And there are multiple places in this diagram that there is no data for, which is the gray parts. But it just shows like how much PFAS can be in our water systems and we don't even know about it. So there are many places that are taking action against PFAS. In the U.S., some states are New York, Washington, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, and Connecticut. More locally, we can see actions being taken in San Francisco, Berkeley, San Anselmo, the county of San Mateo, Carmel, Richmond, the county of Santa Cruz. And these states haven't completely banned them, but they are taking action such as limiting PFAS and not allowing companies to sell PFAS-containing products in those areas. There are even some companies that you may be familiar with that are phasing out PFAS-containing packaging, mostly it's packaging, but also like any other things, out of their companies. And these include McDonald's, Taco Bell, Chipotle, Sweet Green, Panera Bread, Whole Foods, and Trader Joe's. And while they're not completely banning them, they are taking actions that can keep us safer as a community, such as limiting them, or they've at least pledged to try to get PFAS out of their companies, which is beneficial to us.
So kind of shifting back to waste sorting. So what goes where is going to be location specific. So one community or one city may recycle one object, but then that same object may be viewed as waste in another city. So that gets kind of confusing, but it is important to follow your city, your county's rules. So one really great resource for this sorting is called the Resource app or the Stop Waste website. So all you have to do is go to stopwaste.org, or you can go to the App Store or Google Play Store and just download the Resource app, and you will get something like this. So you can see here, all you do is you enter in what you want to sort and your nearest zip code. And can you do the next slide, please? Thank you. And so what I will tell you is where this object goes, and a little small blurb about why this object goes where it does, and if there's pickup, it will be around here somewhere. So as we can see in Pleasanton, paper carton containers that are plastic coated belong in the landfill. As you can see here, it says that it belongs in the landfill because it contains items that are not compostable. So Pleasanton says, just put in the landfill. But as we see in Fremont, this same item belongs in the recycling there, which just kind of goes to show that different places do have different rules, which is why this is a great resource for you, to sort your waste.
Okay, that is it for the informational part of our presentation. Thank you for listening. These are some additional resources that you can go to if you want to read more about anything we've talked about. This is a QR code that you can scan with your phone, and it brings you to the GGI card, which has a bunch of contact info and anything you would want to ask them questions, or probably has your website on it, which will have a bunch of resources for you too. So you can just take your time to scan that, and we can move on. So we do have a quick activity that we would all love for you guys to participate in. If you scan this QR code, it will take you to a Menti, and it'll ask you for 3 words. So we would love for you to, anything like you have feedback for us, or anything that you learned from this presentation that stood out to you the most, we would love for you to put into that Menti. It can help us for future presentations like this.
And we'll just give like 30 minutes and 30 seconds to like 2 minutes just for everyone to fill it out if you guys have your phone on you. And then we are going to move on to our Q&A questions. So if you guys have any questions for us, we'll be happy to answer them.
Wait, you want us to do this now?
Oh, if you can, yes, please.
And then we can move to the next slide, which is just if you have any questions for us, we'd love to answer them now.
And also we have the GI social media as well as Amador local leaders Instagram. If you guys are interested in contacting us in the future, we'll always be available at those social medias. Yeah, thank you guys all for coming. We really hope that you did learn something new. And if you guys again have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll always be here to help.